Hello, my name is Carolina Mariposa, and I am a medical intuitive who founded Butterfly Grove to support highly sensitive children, teens, and families. I'm excited to make this video today to talk specifically about what intuitive guidance is, since it's a core offering at Butterfly Grove. And I want to start off by doing sort of a big picture of how what I do might be similar or different to other energy healers that you've encountered or other medical intuitives. And then I'm going to bring it down to a more detailed level in the second half of the video so that you understand specifically how I work with each individual. So energy healing and the term medical intuitive or medical intuition has different connotations depending on who you talk to and what circles you're in. There are a range of ways that people practice because we're not a regulated industry with fixed standards, and so from practitioner to practitioner you can experience really different effects and different methods. In my experience, I've observed a few different patterns and ranges of experience, and I wanted to share those and explain where I fit in these different continuums that I've observed. So one that I hear a lot is there's a range of beliefs around whether a medical intuitive is innately gifted with their intuition and their perceptions, or if they're trained in specific skills. And people who are innately gifted will talk about themselves as receiving information from the divine or divine sources or spirit sources, and they will often discuss the fact that they've had these abilities for most of their lives, maybe starting in early childhood. Other people on the other end of the continuum, where they are highly trained and learned skills in a training program, those people may or may not have felt like they were innately gifted to start out with, and they see themselves more as technicians and healers with specific protocols to follow, rather than just sort of an open, receptive vessel for divine information. So if we're looking at what I do on that continuum, I fall, if this end is the skills training end, I'm about right here. So I'm not all the way there. I did have the experience early on of feeling like I was intuitive and that I would get very detailed information sometimes about people or situations, but I didn't really understand how I got this information, and it wasn't until I went through a very specific technical training program at the Academy of Intuition Medicine in Sausalito that I felt like I actually had the skills and knowledge and wisdom to be able to work with someone in a responsible and effective way. So that's the first way that I like to explain what I do. Another realm of practice that varies tremendously from practitioner to practitioner is the realm of boundaries. And boundaries in energy work can seem like an oxymoron because many people who incorporate energy healing into their lives are really looking for that sense of oneness and unity with the divine and other people. And so the idea of boundaries isn't always a part of energy healing or medical intuitive work. So one end of that continuum is that the medical intuitive or energy healer does not have a clear protocol around boundaries or does not have a clear understanding of their own boundaries or the energetic boundaries of the person they're working with. And I've heard this described by a variety of intuitives using phrases such as, well, when I'm working with someone, I go into their energy field and I sense what's going on. Or I heard one person say they go into the person's brain and they look around. I heard another person in a YouTube video that I listened to say that they, instead of going into the other person's energy field, they brought that person's energy into their own body so that they could get a clear sense of what was going on. So that's those are specific examples of how people on that end of the continuum who merge boundaries a lot, they might talk about energy healing or their medical intuitive work in that way. On the other end of the continuum, and you may be getting already that I'm usually on this end, are people who have very strict energy boundaries and who work very vigilantly and consistently throughout every energy healing session on maintaining a separation between their energy as the practitioner and their client's energy. And I have built this into my protocols, both in setting up before intuitive sessions, and it's also something I pay attention to throughout a session, as well as after a session is over. I make sure that my energy is very separate with the person that I've been working with. And the reason that that's so important to me as a practitioner is that as a highly sensitive person, I have found that people whose energy is more mergy does not work for me. It actually makes me feel very physically and emotionally uncomfortable. There have been a few situations where I worked with people who were more mergy and actually felt physically sick afterwards. So I really benefit myself as a client from work that has very strong boundaries. Because I'm very sensitive to energy, and I really do better when just my energy is in my space and another person's energy is in their space. So that is also actually a core skill that I teach in Butterfly Grove when I'm working with highly sensitive people, is how you can have a similar understanding and experience of your energy and your boundaries separate from other people. So boundaries are really important. Another way that many intuitives vary is in the types of information that they get. And from my experience, there are a few reasons for this. One is that I feel like many medical intuitives, we do connect in with spirit on a regular basis, and so we have some kind of agreement on a soul level with ourselves and perhaps with other people regarding what kind of healing we're going to do, what our sort of specialty is. And what my experience has been as well is that because we're individuals and we have our own emotional personalities and we have our own relationships and our own life experiences, we also tend to attract clients and people who want to look at certain types of issues who resonate with our personalities and our way of seeing things in the world. And that's not necessarily the intuitive way of seeing things, but I mean just sort of our values and our worldview and how we sort of go about our day-to-day lives. So that's my sense of why that happens, that there's this range of energy and that we sort of use those pieces to hone in on the ones that are most applicable to the people that we have agreements to work with. In my experience, I tend to work primarily with emotional and relational information. You may have heard of other intuitives who do this. I actually watched one on the internet the other day who talked about her belief that emotions were the core source of disease and healing. I don't necessarily believe that in myself, but she was one example of someone who might talk about emotional energy in that way. There are other people who focus almost exclusively on physical illness or physical health, and I'm familiar with a number of these practitioners that I've worked with myself and who are also kind of out there in literature and doing great work in the energy realm. If someone were to come to me and they only had physical health symptoms, I would probably refer them to someone who tended to get that type of information more consistently. I certainly can get physical health information, but as I said, I'm more focused on the emotional, relational realm. Some people also get really big picture spiritual information, and that's almost exclusively the type of intuitive guidance that they provide. So they might see agreements that you have on a soul level with people. They might look at a lot of different bigger picture issues like your life purpose, your soul contracts, those kind of things. So just like with physical issues, I may get information about your spirit and your spiritual path and sort of the bigger picture of your life. But the main focus of my work with highly sensitive children, teens, and families is kind of managing our emotional health and our relationship health. And that has just evolved over time. I think when I first started doing medical intuitive work, before I even trained as a psychotherapist, those were the type of issues that people tended to bring to me. And as I got a lot of training and experience over the last 20 years in my work, which is separate, but as a psychotherapist, it just fostered that knowledge and that perspective on our day-to-day lives, that the emotional and relational issues that we face can sometimes really block us from feeling good about ourselves and feeling really grounded and centered in our energy. So that tends to be the main area of focus in my work. And I want people to know that, especially if they're considering working with me, because if you're looking for someone who will focus more on your physical health or your highly sensitive sensory body, or if you're looking for someone who's just going to give you kind of a big picture reading about karma or things like that, that's not my main focus. So I want to be clear. One other realm that I think is important to talk about when you're medical intuitive is the idea of certainty and uncertainty. And when I talk about those words, I mean in relation to the information that comes in and the knowledge that I may share with a client. And I think this is important to mention because I have seen some medical intuitives or energy healers speak as though they are 100% certain that they have the answers about life, the universe, the people who come to them, and that their way is the way. And I want to be clear that if that's a continuum over here on one end, I'm on another end, which is that I have a beginner's mind set. And that's, I believe, a Buddhist concept. But the idea is that I will get information, I trust the information that I get, I will collaborate with you around the information that I get. But if it doesn't resonate with you, and it doesn't seem very personal to you, then I'm not really doing my job from my perspective as an intuitive guide. I really want someone to have the experience of feeling like they've gained insight and grounding and meaning in the sessions with me. So I want to share a little bit about an example just to illustrate kind of what I'm talking about. So a lot of times when I'm working with people, I get visual images. So I was working with someone a few weeks ago and I kept seeing trees. And for me as a medical intuitive, this isn't uncommon because trees are a somewhat typical image that we associate with grounding and feeling centered, and our roots are in the ground. But it was just a very strong, repetitive image throughout the healing that I was facilitating with this client. And I mentioned to her about the fact that I kept seeing the trees, and I wondered what that meant to her. I asked her in a conversation. And she said actually that she had been out of town for a few days, and she was up in the mountains, and she was surrounded by trees, and she was finding an incredible amount of peace from being there. And so that's an example of I was getting information that was specific to her and that really meant something when I shared it with her. And in fact, when I told her that I had seen that, she said, "Oh, I already feel calmer just thinking about what you're saying, and I feel more grounded. I have to remember to keep going outside and looking at those trees." It kind of, she took that symbol that I saw intuitively and she went with it. So when I'm talking about certainty versus uncertainty. It's more about me having no agenda with the energy healing that I'm facilitating. It's really about looking to you and your spirit for both spiritual wisdom and insight, and also looking to your physical, emotional body and your mind for verification that this energy healing is helping you and is meaningful to you. So it's a very collaborative experience versus someone who might see themselves as more of a teacher with the answers and their way is the way. So bringing this down to how I practice individually, the model that I trained in is called intuition medicine. And intuition medicine was developed by Francesca McCartney, who founded the Academy of Intuition Medicine in Sausalito, and that's where I've trained. If you're interested in knowing specifically more about the Academy and the training programs, I'm going to put a link to their website below. But I want to talk specifically about the types of intuition that I use most in my work, so that you have a clear sense of what the experience would be like for you. Because I could talk all day in sort of a bigger picture way about what intuition medicine is, but I want to bring it down in this video to a kind of a more concrete, tangible thing. So first, I want to talk about how I perceive energy. At the Academy, there is a huge focus. It's really, the main focus is teaching you to pay attention to your intuition and the various ways that you're intuitive, so that you can work with your energy anatomy as it connects into your physical body. So I tend to use the same type of intuitive skills on a regular basis. There are many, many types of intuition, and if you like, I can make a separate video just about that. If so, let me know in the comments below. But for the sake of this video, I'll just talk about the ones that I use the most. So clairvoyance is one that you may have heard of, and clairvoyance is an internal seeing. You don't see as you do with your eyes, but if you close your eyes and you recall the image of, say, a pencil or a person you care about or a dream that you've had, that's more like what the seeing is. So it's internal, but it's still very vivid and visual. When I'm working with someone using clairvoyance, I will observe visual information that their spirit gives me. And usually that first is related to how their energy anatomy is doing. So I'm looking at things like how grounded you are, how protected you are, how your chakras and other energy systems in your body are functioning. And I'm getting images that tell me how you're doing. And these may be just different colors of light. They may be more concrete images. They might be patterns in your space, or they might be, say, holes or dark spots if your aura is not filled in. So that's the type of intuition I use probably most often, is clairvoyance. Another way that I'm intuitive and that I get information from people is clairaudience. And this involves hearing intuitive information. So this might look like me hearing actual words or phrases that I pass on to you, that your spirit is communicating to me. It may also be less specific. It might be songs or tones or musical notes or patterns of sound, such as static, that communicate in different ways how your energy field is doing. When I'm working with someone clairaudiently, I make sure that if I'm getting actual words, that I just say, your spirit is telling me this sentence, or your spirit is telling me this word. What does this mean to you? So again, I'm dialoguing with you about the intuitive information that's coming in. Another way that I'm very intuitive, but that I try not to use too often, is clairsentience. And if you are an empath, this is the intuitive sense that you use the most. It's the one where you feel other people's emotions in your body, and you feel sometimes even people's physical pain in your body. When I use clairsentience too much, it tends to blur the energy boundaries, because I can lose temporarily the separateness that I'm trying to maintain energetically between me and the client, because I'm having the same emotional or same physical experience as they are. So I try not to use that too often, but sometimes it does happen sort of automatically, or related to a certain issue that the person has. And so I may bring in information that has to do with your emotions, your current emotions, or your current physical experience, and let you know if I'm feeling it in my own body and kind of what it's like. But as I said, I'll feel it and then I'll push it out, because I'm not wanting us to be too mixed up and merged energetically. But I wanted to mention it because it is a skill that I use. Another one that any client of mine will know is psychometry, and this is actually sensing energy with your hands. You may or may not know, as you're watching this video, that we have energy centers in the palms of our hands that pick up energetic information. And even when I'm working at a distance with someone on Zoom or on the phone, I will sometimes put up my hands as a way to get information, or as a way to move information or move energy around your space or my space, so that the healing is more effective. And then the final way that I am intuitive in my work with people is in the skill of knowing. And some of you may have had this experience where you just know something about someone, and there's no reason why you would know that. But when I'm working with somebody, I often get sort of intuitive hits that are based in just a spiritual knowing. And my experience with those has been that sometimes those are the most meaningful hits to share with clients, because they're bringing information from really high up in themselves, spiritual information that they're communicating through me, that can bring a lot of relief and emotional calm when you hear it. So I love to get knowing information, because I know it's always going to be a very powerful healing session for the person. Even if I don't understand the information that's coming in mentally, I just will get the knowing and I'll communicate it to the client. So those are some examples of the skills that I use, and there is a separate video and some written information on the website about what a typical session looks like. So I encourage you to check that out if you're thinking about working with me. And I also encourage you to check out the links below and book a discovery call if this sounds like it would be helpful to you. I would love to work with you. So thanks again for tuning in, and hopefully I'll see you soon.